Excuse me, you can't park there.
10% off GamerSup with my code NORMZONE.
I know you like it.
Right, more rivalries. Did you check out part 1? Makes more sense if you checked out part 1. Make sure you check out part 1. Part 1, sponsored by part 1. In this one, we got the bot that declared war on silence, the battle of the grumpy old men, Cassettebot versus Boy.
Ow.
And the bot that did weird things with dead bodies.
Oh, IDW. So silly.
And I'm going to be going through many of your comments too. So get yourself comfortable, hit like on the video, make sure you subscribed, and let's get started with the Aerialbots and the Stunticons. As suggested by quite a lot of you actually. And by proxy, Superion and Menasor. So this one started when Megatron used the power of Vector Sigma to create a new combiner team to help him control Earth's roadways.
We're going to get some wheels!
And the Autobots had to cobble together the Aerialbots from the remains of some old shuttles that were lying around. Alpha Trion gave up his physical form to bring them into being, and voila, there you go. In their first battle, the Autobots were really struggling with the Stunticons. Until the Aerialbots showed up to tip the scales back in their favor, and Superion flung Menasor over a cliff. Menasor responded by bringing down a mountain on him, but not before shooting him in the face, and would have done something with this. I guess bonked him in the head? I don't know, but if Omega Supreme hadn't showed up, Superion would have got bonked good. Instead, Omega and Superion picked him up and threw him, forcing Menasor to disassemble and the Stunticons to flee. They met again in an episode called Cosmic Rust and beat Menasor again, even though he had this giant cockroach that could blast out massive jolts of lightning. In Scramble City, one of the Aerialbots called Firefight got mixed up as to whether he was meant to be an arm or a leg when combining, which let Menasor get the beat down on him. So because he was crippled by having the wrong bot as his leg, Optimus had to shoot the leg off to allow Superion to sort himself out. Imagine going to the doctor and being like, yeah, twisted my knee, and the doctor was like, okay. Once he'd reassembled himself, Superion quickly showed Menasor who was boss and kicked him in the nards. But then Bruticus showed up to counter Superion. Oh fuck! But then Metroplex showed up to counter Bruticus. Oh fuck! Then Trypticon showed up to counter Metroplex. Oh fuck! And Megatron was all like,
check out me cool face.
Did he go on glow up or something? What the f? Then, in the Headmasters, it was all pretty even between the two. The first time Superion deployed, he wasn't able to stop Menasor from going after Optimus, but the next time the Aerialbots managed to stop the Stunticons from combining all together. This was a pretty intense battle though, which was only brought to an end when Scorponok blew up Vector Sigma and destroyed the whole of Cybertron. Anyway, next up, Willem NS4U, Hidden Lotus Lord, Mr. Pickle said, Just a Dude on the Internet, Jason, and a number of others suggested Omega Supreme versus Devastator. And did I really not include this in the last vid? I had all my notes written up on that and everything.
Stupid, stupid, stupid.
Anyway, regardless, the Constructicons started out in the time way back when as pretty good blokes.
Yeah, nah, fuck no.
And Omega helped them build the beacon of light and hope and happiness that was Crystal City.
We were friends.
Omega was obviously pretty proud of it and served as its protector until Megsy got his claws into the Constructicons, brainwashing them with the Robo Smasher device. They promptly got the red eyes of evil and tricked Omega into leaving the city and wrecking up the place. And Omega vowed revenge. They tried to use the Robo Smasher on him too, but luckily it didn't work. Can you imagine? Omega Supreme pursued them, and I quote, for millions of years across the galaxy, eventually following them to Earth. When he finally did get the chance for revenge, he chose to bury Devastator under some ice instead of killing him. Yeah, so the two battled. Omega overpowered Devastator and threw him into an ice cliff, and then had a completely open shot, but decided to shoot above his target. Obviously, this is because it's a kid's cartoon, you know, they wouldn't have been able to show Devastator getting splattered all over the cliff, but it still didn't feel quite right. Anyway, Optimus made Omega realize that saving the city of San Francisco and preventing it from the same fate as Crystal City was more important than revenge. So Omega walked away. Oh my god, he's got a tear in his eye. Oh, they battled again in the All Hail Megatron comic, where they destroyed the Statue of Liberty in a battle that was ultimately won by Omega again. So I reckon he was the winner of this one. Will Trafford said Swerve versus the metaphysical concept of shutting up, which is an interesting one because Swerve was famous for being a never-ending geyser of words, an open floodgate of blah, having been melting people's ears off for centuries. In fact, early on, the other bots nicknamed him Shut the Hell Up. They reckon that his penchant for wall-to-wall blabbing, filling every second with inane waffle, was actually his coping mechanism to cover his own insecurities and low self-esteem. The other bots did get a bit of respite though when he was shot by Voss of the DJD, which somehow left him unable to speak for 6 months.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
Youngling Slayer 2, the remaster reboot of the spin-off sequel, which is actually a prequel, has now been remastered as a remaster!
Alright, so I just want to chat to you about this real quick. It's a company called Saber Custom. They sent me this baselit lightsaber to try out. They didn't pay me anything to talk about it, and I told them that if I didn't like it, I'm going to send it straight back. But it turns out, it's actually pretty cool. Very cool hilt, load of colors, awesome sound effects. People are doing all kinds of things with these, all the fancy spinning moves. They even duel with them. So definitely check them out if that's your bag. Link is in the description. Whoop! Okay, next, as proposed by a flaming idiot and Natek 4488, let's jump to Transformers Animated and Ratchet vs. Lockdown. So in Animated, Lockdown started out as an Autobot studying under Yokotron, before turning to the dark side and killing his former master. Then, after he became an intelligence officer, he ran into Ratchet, stealing his EMP generator to turn what was something Ratchet would use as a healing device into something to make things dead. He also broke off this thing on his head. What do you call these again? Head fins? Ailerons, maybe? I don't know. But all this was at a cost, because he launched his rocket armor at Ratchet and it got destroyed, prompting him to replace it with the hook that we're all familiar with. This battle was soundly won by Ratchet though, as he got his EMP back, freed a captive Optimus, and crippled Lockdown's ship. These two would fight again in the Cool comics, but I'm not sure what happened there, as those are pretty hard to find. You could say that Lockdown got the last laugh in this rivalry though, because he did execute Ratchet horribly in Age of Extinction. Thank you guys for these comments. You guys are gentlemen, scholars, and I salute you. Oh, and Flaming Idiot also says that there's a rivalry between Cliffjumper and the people who say that he dies all the time. And you know what? I still might do a video talking about which bot has died the most across all the continuities at some point, so stay tuned for that. Tristan Welsh said that Shockwave had a rivalry with basically everything in the universe that wasn't Cybertronian. And Noxflex mentioned the epic Beast Wars grudge match that was Depth Charge versus Rampage. That was one of the greats. It all stemmed from the moment that scientists decided to try to recreate Starscream's immortal spark, resulting in the indestructible abomination known as Protoform X. As soon as he came online, he killed everyone on the base. And Depth Charge, the base's security officer, was powerless to stop him. Depth Charge pursued him for years, and again unable to stop him from destroying Starbase Rugby and consuming a large number of the inhabitants. Once Depth Charge finally managed to bring him in, the Autobot Council decided to maroon him on a barren rock somewhere. And once he escaped in the Beast Wars series, Depth Charge resumed his pursuit, with the two eventually killing each other when Rampage allowed Depth Charge to plunge a shard of raw energon into his spark. But even then, Rampage literally had the last laugh. 09er said that my last vid went from a video about rivalries to a montage of Ultra Magnus getting his ass handed to him. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised how much brutalization he'd been through too. And Eugene Monty said that there was another one. Cyclonus and Ultra Magnus were apparently rivals in the cartoon. I'll have to look into that one, as I only remember him rivaling Ultra Magnus for the honor of being Galvatron's punching bag. But you know what? I think Ultra Magnus has been through enough for now, and I'll keep that for a Magnus Spotlight vid further down the line. Here's one that should definitely get a mention, and that's Bumblebee and Barricade in Transformers 2007. No one can forget that epic chase that ended with the Cade heavily damaged, but he repaired himself and took part in the highway chase later in the movie, but wasn't seen in the later battle in Mission City, which is kind of explained in the comics, but I'll get to that in a bit. They fought again briefly in Dark of the Moon, where Barricade was seen taking B prisoner and kicked B right in the spinals for no reason, but seemed a little bit, it seemed like a little hint that there was, some bad blood between them. Barricade then started to execute the prisoners, but B managed to escape thanks to a distraction from Wheelie and Brains. Then, in the last night, Barricade was seen as part of a hunting squad searching for Cade Yeager that was challenged by B, Drift, and Crosshairs. And these guys lured him into a trap set up by Cade Yeager before he was then swatted by Grimlock's almighty Chungus tail. And then later B was transporting Cade and Vivian when Barricade tried to ram them, but ultimately just ended up in the path of oncoming traffic and being hammered by a passing truck. Again, this didn't kill him, and he was seen at the end of the movie where they talked about Unicron. They fought again in the Ghosts of Yesterday novel, and again in the IDW movie comics, where Barricade cornered B before allowing him to escape on purpose, so he could shadow him and find out what intel the Autobots had unearthed. He followed him to Sam Witwicky, where the events of the movie took place, before he engaged B, and B had to be helped out by Ironhide, who knocked him offline. And that's why he missed the battle in Mission City. Then in a later battle, B pushed Barricade into a pool of gasoline, blowing him to pieces, but again, not killing him. Another fight happened in a comic called Rising Storm, with B protecting Sam until finally managing to ground slam Barricade hard enough to knock him out cold. Now this rivalry is interesting because the two bots weren't initially meant to be rivals or have any kind of bad blood. If you watch just the 2007 movie by itself, it could go either way, and it could be the first time that either of these two have met. But as the franchise went on, and the comics and the games came out and so forth, they kind of wrote in more and more. I think that more often than not, Barricade is the more aggressive of the two, with B trying to flee or protect whoever he's carrying at the time, but B more than holds his own against Barricade when he does turn and fight. B and Stinger also had a rivalry in Age of Extinction, as mentioned by Hair Trigger 08, with Stinger being pretty much a clone of Bumblebee. Other than what we saw in the movies, Stinger took on B's appearance to attack a power plant and goad the real B into fighting him. He even set fire to some poor bystander's house to get B to come out of hiding. And when B went in to save the poor schmo, Stinger attacked, even forcing B's face mask shut so no one could tell them apart. Eventually, Optimus broke up the fight and Stinger fled. Of course, B would eventually blow his head off before declaring how he hated knockoffs, don't we all? Still gotta do that knockoffs vid, haven't I? Yeah, I do feel that B's main rival in Bayverse is Barricade. But Mr. Epic Dude 1235 wanted to mention B's rivalry with Steeljaw in 2005 RID, where he almost crushed B in a garbage compactor. He was also driven away in a rumble in the scrapyard, which prompted him to build the gateway that would allow Megatronus into the game. Enzor mentioned Six Shot and Quick Switch, who was apparently Six Shot's son, according to this commercial from 1988, which I can't find. Jay Erames mentioned that Marvel had a literal fuck ton of bots challenging Megzy for his throne. And like you said, buddy, it's probably better made into a video of its own. Let me scribble that one down on the list. Nicholas Farrell said, I missed the classic rivalry between Waspinator and Staying Alive. Skyrain777 mentioned the female Autobots versus Shockwave, which will be discussed in my most powerful female Autobots. That's already on my list. But let's get into a little bit more detail with the next one, which is Whirl versus Cyclonus, as suggested by a few of you, notably Samuel Richards 1288. So this takes place in the IDW continuity, where Whirl was an interesting character, to say the least. He started out as a flyer in the Aerial Corps, before becoming a watchmaker. Yes, Transformers wear watches? Anyway, the Functionist Council, which if you don't know, tried to enforce the doctrine that a bot's role in life should be determined by their alt mode, obviously hated that a flyer like Whirl would do anything like be a watchmaker. So they sent in the heavy mob to put him out of business. From there, he ended up destitute, roaming the streets and getting into fights before being noticed by the Senate's agents and put to work as an intelligence agent and an enforcer. When he refused to do their dirty deeds, he was subjected to the dreaded Imperator. Again, most of you know what this is, but in short, head, hands removed, personality wiped, and replaced with generic whatever the fuck was lying around. He was put to work as a security officer again and sent to kill a certain miner called D16. He failed though, and as a result was thrown in jail to be repeatedly battered by Decepticon sympathizers. He would get revenge on the Senate by tipping off Orion Pax for the fact that they were going to set off an explosion and blame the cons for it. So he got in with the Wreckers before his unhinged tactics led to Springer ruling him out, fearing that he would do more harm than good. Then when Springer was knocked offline, Whirl tried to euthanize him with Roadbuster's Spark Eater weapon, which would drain a being's life force. Roadbuster stopped him before he could go through with it though, and vetoed his membership and had him ejected from the Wreckers. Is this all relevant to his rivalry with Cyclonus, I hear you say? Possibly not, but it does show that he's pretty messed up. Case in point, he would collect up the carcasses of dead sweeps, drag them out into the wastelands and pin them to the walls of his shack, where I guess he got kind of Jeffrey Dahmer on them, you know, kind of let's not go there. Then we had Cyclonus, who was tracking Scourge and honed in on the signal of these dead sweeps, thinking it was him. Can you imagine Cyclonus throwing open the door of this shack going, "Yo, Scourge!" He was immediately set upon by Whirl, who was determined to stop this weird tendency from becoming public knowledge. I mean, over the years, we've unearthed some pretty weird stuff in these comics, haven't we? But this is up there. Anyway, they battled through the wasteland before being interrupted by Tailgate and Co., who took them on board the Last Light. There, Whirl pretended to extend a hand of peace to the Decepticon. Terrifying claw of peace, I should say. Only to have this happen. Evil hug! He trapped Cyclonus and Rewind in a room with an exploding bomb, which obviously didn't kill them, but they did temporarily join forces to take on Lockdown and his Titan Hunters, though. And then later their friendship was further solidified when they had to fight Tyrus' legislators to save Atlas's Circle of Light. So the story does go on, but I'll leave the rest for my video on times Autobots and Cons have teamed up. Team up video, yay! Wizard Blizzard Gaming and World's Best Chocolate mentioned Dreadwing and Wheeljack from Transformers Prime, which is one that I had completely forgotten about. Doit. Basically, after the death of Skyquake, Dreadwing arrived on Earth to find out what happened to him, with Wheeljack in pursuit, who was looking for revenge for Dreadwing killing fellow Wrecker Seaspray, whose death left only he and Bulkhead as surviving members of the Wreckers. That's not true. Ultra Magnus was a Wrecker, wasn't he? Once Dreadwing reported to Megatron, he went against orders and went out to get revenge on the Autobots, first trying to lure Jackie and Bulkhead into a trap, then there was this whole thing with the bomb, before Megatron would eventually make him second in command, until later when he found out exactly what happened to his brother, leaving him disillusioned with the Decepticon cause. So he stole the Forge of Solus and gave it to Optimus, causing Megs to blow a hole through his chest. Gabriel Casor said Towline had an irrational vendetta against illegally parked cars, which was pretty funny. And yes, no bot has had a single solitary focus like this guy. His one purpose in life is to stop driveways from being blocked, double parking. He's towed fire engines in the middle of battling a blaze. Kids' bikes have been impounded, and he even slapped a ticket on a guy in a wheelchair. Oh no, I made that one up. But you get the picture. I mean, this guy must have been so Jobsworth to adopt a bunch of rules that weren't even his, like, or from his planet even. And once, he even towed a fellow Autobot. Sideburn.
I don't recall asking you.
Sentinel was kind of a douche in Transformers Animated, throwing Optimus under the bus at the first available opportunity, and constantly putting him down and the like, though Optimus did laugh his ass off when he lost his head. Dark of the Moon did show the two clashing, though this was less of a long-running rivalry. Rumble struggled with human teen Spike Witwicky on a number of occasions in Gen 1, first pushing him into the sea, and then Rumble seemed pretty happy to serve as his jailer this one time he got taken prisoner in an ep called Day of the Machines. Young Danny came out on top here though, as he used a he used a big fucking magnet to pin Rumble to the wall, then escape from right under his nose. He'd humiliate the cassette bot again in Megatron's master plan, where he would push a shopping cart full of Energon into him, sending him crashing into an electricity generator to be electrocuted. And he just stood there watching him frying for ages. Like, this face is a perfect combination of horrified and titillated. Speaking of Rumble, he had a couple of fights with Hound in G1 too, with the first round going to Rumble, who buried Hound under a pile of rocks.
Breathe harder.
Okay. But Hound got revenge in the very next ep. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on Shattered Glass, mainly because it's a total headfuck. But CDR mentioned Treadshot and the evil Ultra Magnus. So this is one of those ones where they start out as best buds before something, and they end up as bitter enemies. Yeah, same story here. Treadshot and Magnus were trained together by two bots called Gain and Treble. I guess they turned into stereos or something. Before Magnus followed his brother Optimus down the path of evil. A path that Treadshot wasn't willing to go down himself. Treadshot felt betrayed, especially when he saw what kind of brutality his former friend was capable of. Bloody hell, mate. They would clash every time they met, with each battle becoming more and more bitter and relentless, until Treadshot became absolutely obsessed with killing Magnus. He pursued him with a team of valiant and noble Decepticons, while Magnus was searching for rarefied Energon. And he and his team tried to thwart Magnus' plan of bringing Earth and Cybertron into close proximity and destroying them both. Magnus escaped using the Terminus Blade, and Treadshot had to fight him in another universe with the help of some good Autobots. Remember, most of them are evil in this continuity, so you see what I'm saying, right? It's kind of a bit of a what the fuck kind of thing. Before Magnus soundly beat Treadshot. Then Magnus had to fight the good version of himself, what the fuck, before being stopped by Nexus Prime, who banished him to a shadow dimension in one of those little plastic cubes from Superman 2. Maybe, who knows? Could happen. What the fuck? Magnus looks boss in this one though, and he's pretty powerful too. Another big one would be Rattrap and Dinobot, with the lizard turncoat not trusting a being who put survival over glory, and the smart mouth's natural cynicism not allowing him to believe that Dinobot wouldn't turn back to his original colors. The two slowly became good friends over the course of the Beast Wars, and their bickering honestly gave us some of the show's finest moments. Again, I'll go deeper into that into my bots that teamed up vid. Now let's talk about one of the darkest and most sinister rivalries, full of backstabbing and plotting and betrayal, and of course, I'm talking about the king of the food court and Spud Muffin from Bot Bars, a member of the Greaser Gang, sometimes called the Hunger Hubs. Spud pretended to be friends with leader Burgertron, whilst actually hating him. A resentment that had mainly built up because of his sidekick syndrome. He would sabotage Bergatron during event sliding game, he pretended to not know where he was when Bergatron got stuck in the Lost and Found, forcing him to reveal himself to a human, which broke their cardinal rule, and gave Spud the perfect excuse to try and get Bergatron forced out of the group so he could take leadership. He blamed Bergatron for a bird entering the mall, and ruined the bot prom by freeing Dave the security guard, and this time framing the Lost Bots for it. He would actually get leadership at one point, but he was eventually outed and admitted what he'd been doing, and was banished to the dark side of the mall for it. Alright, you guys, that's all I got time for right now. I'll probably do another one of these at some point, maybe later in the summer. That one will have a couple more combined rivalries, Ratchet versus Megatron, Rodimus versus Galvatron, and who knows, get your comments in below. Thank you to all of you who commented on the last one, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon for the next one. Cheerio, bye!